Hello again, and for today, we are ending the decade. Yes, that's right, folks. We are getting into the best of the 2010s content. Finally, I'm sorry this took so long. I'm sorry that you didn't get a Christmas present, but you'll be getting 2 New Year's Eve presents as a result of my transgression. So, sorry, my throat's also fucked up, which is why I didn't do a video yesterday, or at least put it out. So let's get right down to brass tacks. We're going to be talking about movies in this episode. Now, there's a lot of movie opinions that I'm going to end on, so let's get into the listicle portion. So we're going to be talking about some recent films, a couple animated features, some documentaries, and then the honorable mentions will be listed in the description, maybe in the sources, like after all of this blows over, but in the description you'll be getting my movie opinions so that you know what I thought of movies this decade and what the hell happened. And so let's dive right into the documentaries. Now, the documentaries this decade have been, for my estimation, a lot of documentaries have been made focusing on issues that people find perturbing that they want to highlight in some kind of filmmaking form. And this has been kind of the MO of the documentary ever since its inception. However, some people do want to just make fun documentaries, and I am not one of those people who likes watching those. I like watching things that, are highlighting issues in my world. And so let's start off with number 5 from a guy who I met, Matthew Heineman, who is a documentary savant. This guy knows what's up in the world, goes in fucking head first, and tries to highlight the key issues. And with his film Cartel Land, he highlighted that the drug war and the Mexican cartels and the corruption within Mexico are so just hand-in-hand cooperating. There's no hope for the Mexican people, because even the hero that is highlighted in this documentary falls on his face as a corrupt fucking son of a bitch. And so with Cartel Land, Matthew Heineman highlights how the situation in Mexico needs to change really badly. There are a lot of people out there that are suffering, and the Mexican government is unwilling to do anything about it. I think the wall would be a very big help, because then the Mexican government would have to do something about all the fucking people that are staying in Mexico, all the drugs and shit that can't leave Mexico that just go downwards now. And that's my solution to Matthew Heineman's problems that he's highlighting. I'm sure the guy would disagree with me based on what we talked about when he was at the film festival I went to. And overall, Cartel Land is something that really highlights how desperate the situation at the border truly is, and is an issue that has permeated through 2 decades now. So that is why that documentary, is number 5. Number 4, Poverty Inc. Now, despite the catchy title, this is a pretty info-heavy documentary. When I say that, the filmmaker himself, Michael Matheson Miller, was also at this same film festival, or they won the year before, I should say. And he was basically describing what was in his movie at a coffee shop. And it was essentially the fact that there's a lot being done to combat poverty, quote unquote, but all of the solutions that are being used do not help the economy of these third world nations to actually grow. And instead, we are just needlessly sending supplies over to these nations where they need money to be flowing in. They need businesses to be building so that they can get out of third world development hell. And what I really like about this film, what I absolutely like about this film, is that it breaks things down very simply. The number 3 film, in fact, all the films on this list break down these issues very simply. But this is the kind of shit that, your average person on the street understands about people like celebrities and governments and the United Nations, that they don't actually help people. They instead make the illusion that they're helping people, when in reality, all they're doing is filling markets with fucking, unsold products to people in need. And they also called out the company Tom's, who makes the shoes, that for every one pair purchased, one will be donated. And instead, why don't you just fucking buy shoes from that, little community? Why are you fucking sending more shit? They don't need shit. They need money. They need money so they can build an economy. And so that's why Poverty Inc. is number 4 on this list. Number 3, Inside Job by Charles Ferguson. This was the Academy Award winner for the 2011 award season, which is the 2010 year of films. So this still counts. Inside Job is a documentary that highlights what caused the 2008 housing financial crisis that led into the Great Recession. And again, none of these issues have been solved. But the breakdown that this film gives of how we got here is very important for us young people to understand, to not make the same decisions that our boomer and Generation X parents have made. And, all of the people within this documentary are highly accredited people that truly know what they're talking about. I don't know if they do anymore past 2016, but at the time they were, like the creme de la creme, top of the top, people who said, hey, why are we doing this? And then no one listened to them. So Inside Job is number 3 solely for the first real big, political awakening I ever had. And the first, adult situation I had to face, in that I do not want to end up like the people who were fucked over in the financial crisis of 2008. Because, let's be honest, some people have not recovered from that. And we need to learn our lessons. Now, number 2 is in a similar vein to number 3. It is Alex Gibney's Park Avenue. It is highlighting the establishment millionaire or billionaire class, and some millionaires, some multis, that live on Park Avenue. And if you were to cross over Park Avenue and line it up with the same street in the Bronx, you would see austerity that rivals India. It is so fucking grim. And they're douches to their fucking security door people. They're fucking giving money to useless dregs in the think tanks. And again, this is the kind of shit that we're talking about in the Groyper Wars, and these people all live within the same block in Manhattan, in New York City. They have these ridiculously stupid penthouses and, luxury apartments in New York City, trying to, maintain the illusion that they still are power players in the world. But, their time is coming. And again, the austerity that is shown in this movie, or in this documentary, is just so astonishing to me. It is so baffling and mind-blowing that I couldn't, turn away this film from my list. Especially given Alex Gibney's track record this decade. He's had so many different and amazing documentaries that he's been highlighting on some of the similar issues that he likes to go on. Going Clear, I think, is the only one that's really different because it's all about Scientology. But with that being said, Park Avenue number 2, again, really highlights the issues that we face in this world. So number 1 is a tie, and I will have to explain myself. But it's not a tie between 2 different filmmakers. It is a tie for one filmmaker, Lauren Greenfield, who directed 2012's The Queen of Versailles, and most recently for Amazon Prime, 2019's Generation Wealth. Now, both of these movies, one highlights the a family that built their fortune on timeshare condominium sales in multiple locations in the country, in The Queen of Versailles, and Generation Wealth that just highlights all of these fucking kids and other rich people in the world. And when I say these kids, I'm specifically talking about kids that Lauren Greenfield photographed in the 90s going around being like, woo, we're 18, we're rich as fuck, we're gonna do everything, man. You know, like the LA fucking mindset of creating and doing, and then end up doing nothing with their lives. So that kind of person. With all that, Lauren Greenfield, with these two movies, has essentially created a breadth of work that highlights the excesses of consumerism and what it inevitably leads to, which is downfall. And, you know, the family, I believe they're Seagate, and if not, I will make sure to link all of these films that I talk about today in the description, because there's so much fucking to go over. This might be a half-hour video. But with Lauren Greenfield's work this decade, she's just been on the constant attack of saying, look, consumerism is emptiness. And why are we having people push consumerism as a religion? This is like just vapid banality and just complete moron status. Like, it inevitably does not add up to anything meaningful in anyone's life, and instead seems to ruin a lot more than it helps to shape and mold and lift up. So these are the documentaries that I found the most engaging, the most fascinating, the best of the decade. So let's move into animated films. Number 5 is Incredibles 2. Now, this might be a huge bias on my end, but I've been waiting for that fucking movie for over a decade. Not only did it deliver for me what I kind of wanted if I got an immediate sequel, it showcased how far Pixar has come as a company to go from the beautiful animation that they delivered in The Incredibles at the time and how much more detail they're able to do now. And for me, The Incredibles is one of the best animated movies of all time, the original. And even with a somewhat lacking sequel, in the sense that in reality I did want a years later sequel at this point rather than an immediate follow-up. The immediate follow-up we got, I think, would have played a lot better had it played last decade. And it's still all the same people involved in the creative departments. And so this is why I have to give The Incredibles 2 a fair shot on my animated end of the year list. But rest assured, the other ones will be slightly more esoteric and definitely genre pushing for animated features. Now, that is my explanation for Incredibles 2 being on my list. I know a lot of people will disagree, but I don't care. It's my list. And we can obviously have a debate in the comments section if you want, because, oh man, this is going to be a long-ass video. Number 4 on the animated best of the decade list is Miss Hokusai. Now, to me, what I loved about Miss Hokusai is that it wasn't standard anime fare. It was telling a great story about Hokusai and the painters that surrounded his life, including one young lady who ended up painting some gorgeous stuff that rivaled Hokusai's, famous waves. That wave painting. It's just, And the movie was fun. It had not too many anime tropes, which I appreciate as someone who does not like all of the fucking ridiculous tropes in anime. It took itself quite seriously, and it gave all of the art that Hokusai and his disciples made a lot of respect. And the animation in it is some of the best looking anime of the decade, if not of all time. I really value this movie, and I hope that you go out and watch it if you love anime, because it's not action-oriented. It's not comedy-oriented. It's like a serious drama, but just done with anime. And I think it really respects the medium that it works in. So that is Miss Hokusai on number 4. Number 3, the Lego Movie. How could you not love the fucking Lego Movie? The original Lego Movie that nobody expected to be anywhere near as good as it was. And just blew the fucking lid off of the whole genre. And yes, the sequels that they made, Lego Batman, Lego Ninjago, and the second part, did not really meet expectations. But this Lego Movie was so revolutionary for its time. I mean, they painstakingly recreated in CG every Lego element and it looks so good and so not uncanny valley that you think they just did stop motion. So the Lego movie really plays well with its universe. It does a really great hero's journey take. And at the end of the day, it's really made for the Lego enthusiast in all of us, from the adult collector to the child just playing around in the sandbox. And that's what I really appreciate about the Lego movie. And that is why it is number 3 on this list. Number 2 is something that I don't think a lot of people have seen. And it is Sibel Kekilli's The Prophet. Now, this is a film that Salma Hayek invested a lot of money into. She got a couple of her friends to do voices, like Liam Neeson and I believe Alfred Molina. Forgive me if I'm wrong on that, but it's been since the movie came out that I unfortunately have got to see it. I need to go get this movie on DVD, simply because this is not just one kind of animation. This is multiple animation styles going over this story of Sibel Kekilli's The Prophet with this man who's condemned, and he tells all of these beautiful stories to this child who wants to help him, and obviously they save the day. It's kind of childlike in its narrative construction, but the gorgeous artwork that is created just simply for this movie. I mean, there's like a section that is all paint. It's paintings frame by frame by frame. And again, it just shows what you can do with animation. And it showcases the beauty that animation can pull off. And there's 2D, there's 3D, there's the painting stuff, all in this movie. And it's simply beautiful. So let's move into number 1, now that we have gotten through most of this list. My number 1 animated film of the decade is easily Kubo and the Two Strings from Laika Animation. Now, what makes this Laika movie the best one, in my book? The CEO of Laika, Travis Knight, took the reins of this movie and told something that is not only gorgeous, not only really respectful to the culture that it comes from, but it's just a feel-good animated movie. And the fact that it is stop motion, it just blew my mind, like, when I watched it for the first time in a packed audience with kids and parents, and everyone was just, like, off the phones, glued to the screen to see the story of Kubo and how he's going to defeat his grandfather. And for me, again, it's a hero's journey kind of deal, and I love hero's journey stories. I think there are a lot of good ones that can be done. And yet, I do have to say, before I move on into live-action narrative feature filmmaking, that I am disappointed that there was not a lot of great 2D animated works. Miss Hokusai definitely counts. However, I wanted something a little more American, and unfortunately none of you idiot companies delivered. But when it comes to Kubo and the Two Strings, that is like a strongest outing. Missing Link is amazing. The Box Trolls is lovely. Paranorman is wacky and cool. And Coraline is not of this decade. But all 4 of these Laika movies really brought something great to the table. And the fact that people are finally starting to notice now with Missing Link makes me really happy. But you don't forget your first. And for me, my first in the theaters was Kubo and the Two Strings. And I can't get over how beautiful and amazing that movie was. So that is why it is my favorite of the decade. Now, let's finally go into live-action narrative feature filmmaking. We are getting into the weeds of cinema. And I truly think some of these movies are cinema, even though one Mr. Martin Scorsese will disagree with me. But it's okay. You got one on this year. You got one on this decade. So number 10 is a film that came out this year, and it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, as a bit of trivia for myself, me and Mr. Quentin Tarantino share not a foot fetish, but a birthday. And yet, he was never my favorite filmmaker. Once I watched shit like Inglourious Bastards, the Quentin Tarantino mystique finally wore the fuck off on me. And I didn't like Django. I didn't really care for The Hateful Eight. And it's because I didn't think these movies really meant anything to him. You know, I felt like ever since Kill Bill, he had nothing to say within the genres that he wanted to ape. And, you know, these movies that he was essentially ripping off, but making his own and making them maybe better. And yet, with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there was a lot going into that movie that Quentin didn't have that I think made it better. He didn't have Harvey Weinstein, and with good fucking reason, because that nigga got outed. But with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino has finally got something to say about the state of the industry, and a movie industry that he loves, something that he wish was better at handling the monsters, something that he wish was, you know, better at communicating to audiences, something that he wish would, you know, return to form, essentially. And for me, this is a return to form for Quentin Tarantino. I think this movie is better than my last favorite Quentin Tarantino movie, Jackie Brown. And so my order goes now: Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, Once Upon a Time, Jackie Brown, the rest. And man, oh man, seeing this in a theater made me so fucking happy this year that this guy turned his shit around, because I was, you know, hoping beyond hopes. And 10 years later, he finally fucking delivers again. And it makes me really excited to see what he ends his career with, if this is truly film number 8 and we only get 2 more in the next decade. So, with all that said, let's move on to number 9. Number 9 is, for me, one of my favorites of last year, but overall, one of my favorites of all time now. But you'll see why I couldn't really bring myself to put it at best of the decade. And number 9 is Ready Player One. Now, again, I love Steven Spielberg, but I don't think Steven Spielberg makes Steven Spielberg movies the way he used to anymore. He does not make Raiders of the Lost Ark. He does not make E.T. or Close Encounters. Instead, he makes Oscar bait movies that are there for the people who want to see him do more Schindler's List stuff. And Schindler's List is a great movie. I just think it's not a Spielberg movie, not conventionally anyway. Like, the only thing it really has is that it has an everyman protagonist trying to, you know, achieve a goal. And that's it. And then you get shit. I think especially what makes Ready Player One so great to me was the last Spielberg movie I saw in a theater or at all was The Post. And that is the, like, least Spielberg movie that he's ever made. And it really pissed me off. Because if you know anything about this channel, we don't like the journalists here. And when you venerate the journalist, you are literally succumbing to Satan. So, with Ready Player One, Steven Spielberg took this really meaty book, streamlined it for the feature film experience, and essentially he created something that makes Avatar look like trash, you know, again, brings in the hero's journey, but, you know, this kid, this Wado and Watts character, is not just any hero. He's influenced by all the heroes, much like his own hero, the wizard Parzival, who's, you know, the founder of Gregarious Games, James Halliday. And to me, Spielberg was delivering not only a love letter to the 80s, not only a love letter to his past, but a love letter to all of the great action and adventure films in cinema. I've seen that movie 4 times. That is the second film I have seen in theaters the most amount of times. And every time it just got better. I just noticed more. I just noticed more thematic stuff, like beyond just the narrative, that Spielberg was saying, hey, if you like Raiders of the Lost Ark, if you like E.T., if you like Close Encounters, if you like Saving Private Ryan, which is the blending of Oscar Bates Spielberg and classic Spielberg, then you're going to love this new movie I got for it. It's called Ready Player One, and again, it shot right at my heart, and I couldn't get over it, especially because he released it like March 28th, 2018. Oh man, that was my birthday weekend in a nutshell. And so that is why that movie has a very special place in my heart and a very special place on this list at number 9. So let's move on to number 8 with Martin Scorsese's The Wolf of Wall Street. Now, Martin released The Irishman this year, and it is a very long movie that plays a lot slower. However, the last very long movie he did is this one, The Wolf of Wall Street. And it came out this decade, and it was the surefire Leo DiCaprio performance that would have netted him the Oscar. And everyone just kind of was like, the fuck, nigga. That the Jordan Belfort character he showed to the world was dynamic. It was just electric. Like, I could not believe what I was watching when I saw Leo run around this Jordan Belfort. Just the debauchery, the degeneracy. I could not believe what was going on in this movie. You know, Martin Scorsese is not that kind of guy that you would be like, oh, you like getting peed on. Whoa, okay. It's just like, you see this movie, and it's just balls to the wall insanity. And you can't believe that these guys essentially swindled millions of morons. And that's the plot of the story. And so, with The Wolf of Wall Street, this is a film that I think, you know, plays to all of Martin Scorsese's strengths. You know, shows that he still has something to say. Still is a young, you know, full of exuberance as a filmmaker. And, you know, again, that's why this is his best movie of the decade. And number 8 on my fucking list. So let's move on. Now, number 7, I believe to be the best science fiction film of the decade. And number 7, of course, is Ex Machina. Now, I went and saw this with one of my best friends, and we were just talking about this movie for hours afterwards. You know, all the implications, all the ramifications of the plot of this movie, which is essentially a social media office drone, gets to go to his CEO's secluded mansion and test out a brand new artificial intelligence robot that is, of course, a girl. It's a boy meets girl story with disastrous consequences. And to me, this kind of setup from Sunshine writer Alex Garland, who directed this movie to, I think, great success, showcased the kind of world that we are looking into the future of in this coming decade. You know, when the machines come, it will not be as friends. It will be as something that we need to get control of before they get control of us. And this film is exactly the kind of showcase that I think civilization needs right now, with all of the giant pushing of technology. And that is why this movie is number 7. Now, number 6 is Whiplash from Damien Chazelle. So I got a Damien Chazelle story for you. Before he was the wunderkind musical crazy guy filmmaker, Damien Chazelle made a film out of Harvard called Guy and Madeline Sitting on a Park Bench. And at the beginning of this decade, I watched, as a film professor, fucking scorched earth berated him on a stage in front of, you know, an audience full of boomers at how just indulgent Guy and Madeline Sitting on a Park Bench was. And I felt that he took all of the criticisms from his first film and said, okay, let's make that J.K. Simmons character. And this is what we get as a result. This is a passion-driven film. You feel that Miles Teller's character is Damien Chazelle. You feel that all the people criticizing him in the first movie that he ever made is Terrence Fletcher, is J.K. Simmons. just wailing and wailing and wailing at him, trying to make him the best. And that is what this fucking movie represents. It represents the grind that it takes to be the best, the mental stress that you induce yourself with in order to be the best. And with this film, Damien Chazelle proved he knows how to make a great movie about music. And so that is why Whiplash is number 5. Now, the next 3 movies? Oh, Jesus. There are 4 movies that all came out in 2014 that still hold up to me. Next one, number 5, is Nightcrawler. And that holds up like a motherfucker. Nightcrawler is a film directed by Dan Gilroy, starring Jake Gyllenhaal, about this creep named Lou Bloom who decides to become a news cameraman who is a freelancer that sells stories to the networks. And he builds up a career on top of bodies, literally and figuratively. And oh man, great performance, great direction, incredible writing. And the cinematography too, for a guy that runs around getting like really shitty shots, it's just like breathtaking. And you know, it just truly makes LA like this gross place. Like, it's just so disgusting. And Lou Bloom encapsulates like these kind of people that come into LA to try and do something with themselves. And holy fucking shit, bro. Like, what a film is all I gotta say to that. So let's go to number 4 with Bong Joon-ho, who's doing tremendously right now with Parasite. And Korean films are doing great right now, like Okja. But with 2014's Snowpiercer, which is the number 4 movie on this list, my mind was blown. Again, it's a science fiction action movie about the end of the world and everyone being forced to live on a train, much like Park Avenue and Poverty Inc. and Inside Job and all these documentaries. It talks about austerity and how that, you know, saving the world, you know, what would we have to sacrifice in order to, you know, keep the people, you know, moving the engines of society happy if they somehow were able to get a plan together to save humanity. And again, it's a beautiful movie. Tony Zhou of Every Frame a Painting showcases Bong Joon-ho's incredible decision to tell the story from left to right as if the narrative progresses. And whenever we have to explain character stuff, he flips the world to 180 degrees from right to left. And again, that technique in itself in directing was just mind-blowing once it was told to me. And again, Snowpiercer is just one of these movies that comes out of nowhere and sucker punches you. Unfortunately, I got to see this film twice in theaters. I love the city I live near. It's awesome sometimes. But Snowpiercer, it just took something that wasn't that great. Those French comics are not that good, and made an amazing film. Amazing film off the back of it. So I'm going to spoil 3, 2, and 1 in the sense that they are all comic book related films. And so technically number 4 is as well. So what is number 3 then? It's a film that, much like Ready Player One, just hit me at the right moment in my life where I needed to pick me up and said, hey, you like them Marvel superheroes? We got you covered, pal. And that is 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, this is a movie that I know beat for beat, almost line for line, shot for shot, and again, couldn't get enough of it. It was just so good and so, like, it just surprised me so much. Much like a lot of films on this list. I couldn't, like, just keep up with how much I smiled during it. You know, all these characters in this, you know, space universe that nobody knew before just were given such great detail, such pathos, such understanding. And they were made into things that made them better now than they were before. And although I do not like him, James Gunn is a fucking great director. He directed Super this decade and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that I also will have in the honorable mentions. And again, like, this guy came out of nowhere and delivered just the feel-good movie of the year that year. And it was just, again, mind-blowing. Mind-blowing stuff. And the color of that movie is just so breathtakingly gorgeous. Couldn't handle myself. Saw it 7 times. That is the number one movie I've seen in theaters, just based on the amount of times. Fucking Guardians of the Galaxy. And I, probably have the majority stake of the box office receipt. So sorry, guys. But I couldn't get enough of that movie. You couldn't stop me even if you dared. And oh my god, this is the longest video I've ever made. So let's keep the train going. Number 2 is The Avengers. Why? Because it did something revolutionary for this decade. And number 1 obviously did something slightly more revolutionary for this decade. But with The Avengers, you finally had the culmination of multiple movies into one giant team up that delivers on every note. It has lightning rapid pace. The characters are all fleshed out without having to do much work. The battles are just phenomenal. Still, the choreography, the cinematography, everyone did their part. And again, it sets up for something more. It doesn't leave you hanging. It doesn't say, yeah, we did it. It's like, no, we got more in the can. What are you talking about? And again, The Avengers, I think, is one of the more important superhero and just films of the decade for the kind of precedents it set up in the cinema-going experience, in, blockbuster filmmaking, in narrative story structure. And there's no way that you're going to forget it. But it's not the winner here, folks. You want to know the winner? You want to know what society is like? Well, then, as cringy as that shit just sounded, fucking number 1 is Joker. There has not been a film, again, much like all the documentaries that I've highlighted, that kind of reflects reality back onto us and shows us, look at the world around us. Look at how fucked up it is. Look at how awful it is. It's all a big fucking joke. And again, Joaquin Phoenix delivers. Todd Phillips, Mr. fucking Hangovers, an old school guy, just reinvents himself for the next decade to come after being a 20-year comedy veteran. And like, Jesus Christ, what an amazing movie. What a revelation. And it all is in fucking, again, these properties. It's Todd Phillips taking an established property and doing something mind-bendingly different with it. He really reached for it. He really went for it. Joaquin Phoenix just fucking blew Heath Ledger out of the water. Now we can have multiple Jokers again, like that wasn't a thing already. But in the collective consciousness, I think Joker will be an important film that, much like Taxi Driver did before, it showcased how fucked up our cities are and how we need to clean house. We need to solve our issues. We need to not sell books forever on how to solve our issues. And Joker will be one of these movies that just kind of highlights how we keep making the same mistakes and it keeps creating monsters. And that is why Joker is the number 1 movie of the decade, even though it came out so late. So I have multiple honorable mentions. I have a worst of that I'll go over very quickly. Men, Women, and Children. It's an awful ensemble film that has just these boomer messages about, we need to separate the family. Like, when I say boomer, I mean obviously like post-sexual revolution messages of like, family isn't real anymore. And it's just like, this is cringe. And again, it just has like kid messages of like, don't play video games, you're a fucking loser if you do. Like, get offline. And it's just, again, it's just such a boomer take of a movie. that I was surprised that Jason Reitman directed it. And it's one of his worst ones, easily. I am so glad he's recovered since then, but Jesus Christ, man. That was a dumpster fire. So let's go over the movie opinion so I can wrap up this commentary. Now, indie films really suck now. I will do a dedicated why I hate indie movies, but it's essentially just an identity politics game of fucking delivering these who gives a shit movies to the, flagellating white audience that will say it's the best movie ever because it has a X identity person in it. And so I will go over that more, but indie film is garbage this decade. There's a reason why I didn't have a lot of indie movies in my fucking list. And you'll see only a couple in my honorable mention, so just be aware of that. Studios now control more ground in the industry, and I think that's really bad. The filmmaker is obviously suffering under the system. There are only, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, known directors in my list this decade, and all of the breakouts, deserved to go on this list. And it's not good to have the studios in control. This is what kind of created the ground that New Hollywood was birthed from. And, it shows that we need to fix our issues in cinema. Now, the next issue is the Chinese audience debacle, in that Hollywood is pursuing what is essentially a communist audience in order to get their money to fund more big budget tentpole movies. And this kind of shit did not work for 2 movies on my list, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and Joker. They made money despite not being in China. And these studios got to realize that, you're catering to a fucking country that hates us in order to get their money so you can make more shit. When, if you just cater to us, we'll make you money that will deliver into the next year or decade or whatever. But no, you gotta go after the easy buck. And it shows how completely compromised you are as people. In that similar vein, ideological hegemony is stagnating creativity. And again, this is shown with the diversity awards. This is shown with the, we need to have X person win this award because it's good for representation. Representation is an argument in general. It's just so fucking stupid. In a similar vein, the restructuring of the merit of films. People shit on Joker even though it is truly a good movie, at the very least, because it's scary or it's racist or it's sexist. And it's just we are now judging movies based on their diversity points. It's awesome. So I got 2 more points. One, actively hating the audience. That's a new phenomena that we've seen with people like Rian Johnson and Brie Larson and, whoever in fucking the industry. It's not good for business. It's not good for your bottom dollar. Do not listen to those kind of people and don't hire them. It's going to hurt this next decade coming. You're going to see dwindling audiences because you hate on them. They're the people putting the fucking lights on set. So shut up. Shut up. And this is something that people like to say about last decade that is way more prevalent now. Originality doesn't exist because everything has been done. You need to find new ways to attack issues. And that way, you will make original content. But you will not see originality in the studio system. You need to push for things you like in the independent world. If you like movies like High Rise, Free Fire, The Art of Self-Defense, Z for Zachariah, Dope, go see those movies as many times as you can and elevate them to a status where people take notice and make more original works like that. So, in conclusion, this decade was pretty loaded with movies. It's going to be way more loaded with television, and I really need to wrap this commentary up because it is way fucking long. But with all of this movie content, we see that, the cinema chains are not doing as well because movies now get released on fucking streaming services. And we will not have the cinema for much longer if we don't protect the cinema. So go support your favorite movies. Go to local theaters. Don't pay for garbage. Reward successes and stop rewarding failure. To wrap this all up, Hollywood, your time is coming again. We will have a new Hollywood maybe in the next 2 decades if you are not playing your cards right. And if you play your cards wrong, well, you better tread lightly, because there'll be lots of filmmakers waiting to take over.